Around 8 p.m., the second suspect got in touch with us. He said he was armed and talked to us about his crime. He seemed willing to collaborate. He was apparently waiting for police to pick him up. An emergency response unit immediately moved to meet the suspects and arrested him around 9 p.m.
And we can go now to Quebec City, where we're joined by Katu McKinnon. She's a reporter for CBC. Hello, thanks for taking the time to speak to us. What more can you tell us about this attack, particularly the suspects?
The suspects, there are some names which are circulating, but I have not been personally able to confirm them. But they are out there. For lack of a better term, one appears to have a more Quebecois-sounding name, a French-sounding name, and the other has what you might describe as a more Arab-sounding name. You just described the arrests last night. One was near the mosque almost immediately after the arrival of police, and the second was following the second suspect's phone call to police and him essentially surrendering. But aside from that, we know that there are, one is a man in his late 20s, the other would be in his early 30s, but there's very little official information at this time.
And what about reactions to this shooting? I mean, this isn't something Canada's used to at all. We've seen quite a lot of shock and anger.
That's exactly it. Our premier, everyone actually, from our premier to the people from the Muslim community, which is quite small here in Quebec City, we might be talking about several thousand people in a town that's the capital of Quebec of 500,000 population. It's quite small. We have just a few mosques. People know each other. I just got off the phone with a man who I'd seen last night, Abdul Aziz, and he says one of the victims is somebody that he knows and probably most of the Muslims know, because he runs a halal grocery, which was near the mosque. Apparently, he was instrumental in helping people who came to this country from other countries in adapting. He would help them out. He was a first point of contact. Beloved, he was also a father. So people here, as you mentioned, it's not the kind of thing that we're used to seeing here in Canada, period. But in Quebec City, because it's such a small place, the idea of a terrorist attack here on a mosque is absolutely astounding. A member from the community just said, we have no words, and that's what I've heard over and over from members and politicians. You know, this is not the kind of thing you would ever expect to hear to happen here.
Speaking of politicians, Katu, the Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is travelling to Quebec City today. Do you think he'll be given a warm welcome, or do some people there actually blame him perhaps for opening the door to refugees?
I don't think the two can be linked. Right now, there's actually been an outpouring of support from people in Quebec City. I spoke to a man who I spoke to last night, and he said, we're surprised and our hearts are warmed by the fact that people are calling in and supporting us. There are some racist elements, and there are some extreme right people in Quebec City, but I think that the presence of the Prime Minister today, I mean, I'm not a fortune teller, but I think that it will be seen as a sign of support for the Muslim community, and I don't think that anybody here would directly blame him for the actions of two men and for such violence.
I understand, though, that there has been in recent years a rise in hate crimes in Canada involving Muslims. Could you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, here in Quebec, it's an interesting province. It is the only French-speaking province, and we had something called a debate about reasonable accommodation and what the provincial government would do in terms of accommodating religious minorities and also keeping the state in the religious neutrality of the state. And during that time, I remember there were incidents. There was a woman who spat on a family of Muslims at a shopping mall during those hearings and during that debate. We had an incident of a man who is from Afghanistan who decided to rename his restaurant, which had been named Kabul, because he was getting regular taunts and hateful messages. And just last summer, there was somebody left a hog's head gift wrapped during Ramadan on the very doorstep of this mosque, which was attacked, saying bon appetit. So it is not immune from racism.
All right, Katu McKinnon, thank you very much indeed for joining us from Quebec City. She's a reporter for CBC.